It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. The Silverlight Press publication, A Run to the River, chronicling the 2013 Division IV state championship journey by author and coach Ron Glodich, has been successfully launched nationally. And in this third installment of our series promoting the book release, we're looking at how the community of Marine City, Michigan was touched by this team and continues to be by this program. We're joined by some special guests who have experienced and contributed to bringing the team and games to life in various capacities. Now here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzezinski-Drew, and I am joined by Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners, and we're here to talk about A Run to the River, a book by author and coach Ron Glodich. And Coach Shield, you were part of that. You're part of that staff to this day. You were part of that staff in that 2013 championship team. This is a special show for you. I know that. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In our third installment in our Run to the River series, the #1 youth sports book in the world, according to Amazon.com. It has peaked at #1. We know that it's a special piece, a special piece of writing, but and there's a lot of testimonials that are coming out that's sharing that same sentiment. But you don't fool numbers like that. This is a great book, and it's a lot of fun talking about it. Yeah, it really is. Had the pleasure of reading it, and just I'm going to read it again and put it that way. It's that good. It really is. Not because I'm from there, but just because I dig the story. I mean, I really do. It makes me think about the movies that I like Remember the Titans, Miracle, things like that. It really has that feel for me, and I'm sure it does for a lot of people. Oh, absolutely, and I think there's so many different people, and I am one of those as well. I'm not typically a chapter book reader. That's not the type of reading that I typically do. And yes, I had some incentive because I knew the story so well, but it just, the way it's written and how it goes in and out of the current to the past, which is now the past of the past, but you know what I mean. It's spectacular. It's a book that can be read pretty continuously by even a person that would be considered a non-reader. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, just it pulls you in many different levels. So it's a great book, and we encourage everybody to get it. But we've got some special guests here, Coach. Let's bring out the author, shall we? Absolutely. For the third time, we are going to introduce a now Marine City High School Athletic Hall of Famer to go along with his Michigan High School Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame status. One of the most successful athletic coaches in Marine City High School sports history, boys, girls, you name it. He has been a championship head coach in the sports of football, boys basketball, girls volleyball, and baseball at Marine City, winning league titles in each. Without any further ado, the head coach of the Austin Catholic Prep boys basketball team, Ron Glodich. Welcome, Coach.
Thanks. Oh, guys, thanks for having me. This is a special episode for me because of the guests, and they were around when I started at Marine City, so I can't wait to have some conversations that go way, way, way back to the beginning of time in 1987 when Coach Bob and I started in Marine City. So thank you for having me. You guys do a wonderful job with this.
Appreciate that, Coach.
Thanance, Coach.
Coach,
let's get some of these guys out here. These this is a little bit different. We've had some coaches of the past. We had Coach Scarcelli and of course Coach Bob Siskevich in our first installment. Then we had captains from and Alex Merchant on the broadcast for the second. Some players, and we're going to have some community members, and these are some pretty distinct community members. Both of these gentlemen can be really dubbed the voice of the Mariners. The first individual was a WSMA color commentator in the late 70s and early 80s. His career culminated and came to an end in 1987, where he would transition to becoming the public address announcer of the Marine City Mariners, a job that he held for 30 years. He was a 40-year school counselor at Marine City High School and briefly at St. Clair High School, and now lived in the community
for 50 plus years. And more importantly to me, he's the guy that got me introduced to Marine City athletics, taking me to sporting events in those late 70s, getting to see, people like, Mr. Zimmerman's brother and some of these other people when I got to grow up watching. And then eventually I got to be a water boy in the early mid 80s of Marine City sports, culminating into my career. This individual is probably, for me personally, not without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest influence I have had in my life. Dave Shield.
Wow. I don't have any Kleenex handy here, but I might need it.
Well, I'm surprised you heard it.
Thank you so much for having an old man on, and I'm delighted to talk about Ron's wonderful book and what a phenomenal career he had, both as an educator and as a coach. He was just an outstanding guy, and I'm so pleased that the book is doing so well.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Mr. Shield. Coach, got another guest.
We certainly do. And this is the current voice of the Mariners and an outstanding broadcaster in the downriver portion of the Blue Water area. He has been with in and around the Marine City football program for as long as I know, because he was the color commentator when I was a player, and then eventually became into the television ranks. I want to say sometime in the late 90s. I remember moving back into the area when I worked at Clintondale, and I was watching Craig Zimmerman and Jerry Bissett call Marine City football games. And I can remember distinctly being an assistant coach in another program, coming in on the road into that vaunted press box at East China Stadium and patting my dad on the back along with Jerry and this man right here, Craig Zimmerman.
Thanks for having me in.
Welcome.
Always excited to talk Mariner football.
Hey guys, it's a pleasure having everybody on here. Before we kick this off, Coach Glodich, I got to ask you. So far, the book came out on the 19th nationally, and Coach Shield touched on how it's doing so far. Have you been surprised so far by the responses that you've been getting?
Yes and no. I know that there's a strong community support, so I was expecting maybe right out of the gate we'd have some sales, but what's been encouraging is over the 2-week span, we continue to go up and down, and every once in a while we'll pop into the number one spot, and that's been encouraging that it's kind of sustained a little bit of its momentum even after the initial launch on the 19th. So, and then we do have some things coming down the road that I hope keep the momentum going with the sales. So it's been exciting 2 weeks so far. Yeah.
Great.
Fantastic. Fred, you chronicled very well. You did really a broadcast that was recorded on DVD yourself in regards to the 2013 team, and did some interviews along. And then we had some, great Big Dog Media, I believe, contributed some of the highlights that were used at times too. And there's some really neat video chronicling. Unfortunately, this is 2013, so we did have quite a bit of video footage and things that we can archive and watch and listen to again. You have been around Marine City football a long time, and you really have been kind of the chronicling voice in regards to Channel 6, really through this greater portion of the playoff era of Marine City football, basically dating back to most consistently the late 1990s to the current time. Explain to me what you think the 2013 team in regards to the whole lineage of it. I mean, what were your thoughts going maybe into that season?
Going into it, I think that, I think 07 sort of gave us this feeling in the community that this can happen. Before 07, it seemed like getting to a semifinal or Ford Field was like way out there. And after 07, it seemed like, it's sort of like getting the roadmap, and you went there once and you sort of got the feeling that, wow, this is achievable. And then I think, didn't we go back in 11? I think it was, 11. And then obviously going in 13, sort of the same thing. And when you look at the consistency of, you still even look at it today and you say, Jerry Workington started back in about 1974, and he laid the groundwork. and he got him from an also ran to a competitive team. And then Coach Bob came in and basically took him to the next level. Ron was with him. Tony was with him. We ran against teams like Orchard Lake St. Mary's that technically probably shouldn't have been in the same, breath as us, but we played them and we did it. Then in 13, we got there again. And it's small town football. It's what Ron preaches. It's all about, I know this, maybe not 13 specifically, but 07, my son was on the team. And the story I always like to tell is my son was probably, and Ron, you could help me, he was probably 5'7", 145, and wasn't going to run through the wall for anything. Yeah. He was one of the smartest kids on the team, but not the most talented. But he would come home after playoff games and he would say, "This is the greatest day of my life," and had not seen the field. And I think that's a huge, huge thing that Ron and Tony and Bob have all taught, that Monday through Thursday, you've got to bring your best and have a good scout team to show up on Friday and expect to win. And that was, it just carried on. It was just sort of a known thing that I think it's just like a workmanship mentality, knowing that if you do A, B, C, and D, you're going to get to E. And that's sort of the thing of 13. I always say when we go, people always ask to just, sort of like say around the water cooler, what's going on? How's the season look? Or when we get to like we are now, going on to week 7, they say, well, how are we looking for the playoffs? You can never predict where you're going to be or what you're going to do. But if you keep healthy and you're doing the right things and you're getting better, with the coaches that they've had, that they're going to put you in the right position to win. So, it takes the right schedule, it takes the right, health, and you go into 13 and you have all that. And, I guess back to Ron, you don't ever expect, hey, we're going to win. You have the feeling you can and you will, but it's not like you're not going to go boast to the community, we're going to win this all, right? So you just know that you're doing all the right things to put them in the right position. And I would think that's what Ron does.
Yeah, that's a great point, and well said, Craig. And Mr. Shield, I'd like to ask you, did it feel different coming into the season, in that 2013 season? Did you have a feeling this was going to be something special, or did the team just kind of come on and slowly build up to that point in your mind?
Well, I knew the kids growing up and had played well during their junior year and before. And then we had the changeover with a new guy coming into town who was a junior and a quarterback from Port Huron Northern. And you kind of wondered, well, how is that going to work out? And it couldn't have worked out any better. And that's a tribute not only to the young men, but to the coaches who made that work. But as the season went along, I kept thinking maybe this is going to be the one that we're going to get another championship. And particularly, I guess, after the regional final country day game, that was a nail biter with some classic plays at the end. I kind of had a feeling we might get through this thing. And then when we went over to play Lansing Sexton on a day that was so cold and windy, you wouldn't know how it was going to work out, and we won that one. And I thought maybe we're going to win this thing.
That's this special season, special feeling. Coach Glodich, I'd like to ask you, in reading the book, the lineage throughout the whole book is this season, but I love how you would go back and do like a flashback and talk about some experiences or just or the people that really helped influence, but then you pulled it back into what would be the present storyline, which was that 2013 season. What went into that? Because that, to me, just by looking at it, being a journalism minor, I love the writing, but how did you plan that and orchestrate that where the flashbacks were very timely?
Yeah, I thought it was crucial, and it was one of my main motivations for writing the book is to make sure people understood, how the program got to where it is in its current state, and that goes back to Mr. Workentine as AD and Coach Bob as that head coach. I've said to a few people that Tony and I, Coach Scar and myself, we have state championship rings, but Coach Bob is the king. We got the rings, but Coach Bob is the king. He's the king of Marine City football. And you can't write a book about Marine City football without tying in his influence. And I just said it in an interview the other day, how much we're still leaning on his influence in what the kids see today and what they experience. For example, the harpoon on the helmet, that's from Coach Bob. The smoke coming out of the tunnel, that's from Coach Bob. The cannon, the boat, these are all things from Coach Bob. The offense that we evolved, started with Coach Bob. So my gosh, you cannot talk about Marine City football without giving him his due. And he's such a humble guy. He'd never want me to do that. So I said, the heck with that. I'm going to do it whether you like it or not, Bob. So that's the way it is.
So you got to handle it, right?
Well, and staying on Coach Bob, Dad, I can remember our conversations very, very vividly of this time because I was just about ready to become a football player. At that time, there was no junior football, did not exist. We had some intramural, Dave, you were part of this too, probably at Pine River, intramural flag football after school, 2 days a week in 6th grade or something like that. Then in 7th grade, we had a reprieve once again because we didn't have it. And then in the 8th grade, we're going to be, Mariners starting 8th grade football. And Coach Bob was hired when we were in 8th grade. So that I was in his first class. And, so many times, Dad, we were in press boxes together when I was young. And so I would have this great perspective of watching these great games. Yeah, a lot of times, we're at Ward Cottrell doing Marine City and Holy Cross, and we'd go over to St. Clair too. But I can remember doing some kind of neat things during Marysville playoff runs and getting to be in the, Flint Atwood Stadium's press box with you guys and how big of a deal. And even at Viking Stadium, now known as Walt Braun Viking Stadium, which is a different stadium. I'm talking about the old stadium. It just seemed like a bigger deal there. It just seemed bigger. What did you think when Coach Bob was hired? Because I remember some distinct words that you had that I know you were very happy and very intrigued. What did you think when he was hired?
Well, I relied on Jerry Workentine, and he and I had become good friends. Jerry, of course, is a Marine City High School grad, was a very outstanding athlete there. I came to Marine City in 1971, lucky enough to get a job as a counselor there. And he came a couple years later. And I saw him work so hard to put the culture together that had really been in pretty rough shape in the early 70s. And he had the kids buying in and fighting and trying so hard. And he had some success, but it was a tough time in the 70s. And there was a millage crunch where we didn't have sports for a year, though that sets you back if you're a coach trying to build a program. And then in the 80s, it really started to come along. And by this point in time, I was lucky enough to have a radio color job that I was doing with a guy named Jack Dragmiller, who was also a great Marine City High School athlete. And so I was following the program very closely, and I know how hard Jerry worked. And Andy, when we got to the playoffs there in 85, I don't know if you remember, but we got a hotel room up in Flint because the first game was in that neighborhood. And I figured, well, maybe this is the only time we're going to make the playoffs. So let's make it special. And so we stayed overnight at the hotel after we won the game. And WSMA, who I was still doing a little color work for, they had to shut down. Their license made you shut down at sundown. But I called in a report, so when they came back on in the morning, they played the report of the game, and then we went on to Flint Atwood Stadium for a second game at night. Now we had to do another one of those, but I had full confidence that Jerry Workentine was going to find a guy who was going to get this, keep the program going that he had gotten started. And so he brings in Bob Siskevich from Deckerville, Michigan. And I knew he had done his homework, and I figured this is going to be really interesting because he said, this guy runs the ball and it's going to be interesting. Well, right around that time, I switch over to the stadium announcing, and I'm telling you, I'm glad. I've been blessed with one thing, and that was pretty good vision, because keeping your eye on that ball with Coach Bob's offense was a trick. But one thing between both Jerry and Bob, and carried on with Tony and Ron and Darren, and I know with you, Andy, diligent work throughout the week to prepare for games. I was just so impressed with how serious and diligent he was. And I think that makes the difference between winning and losing oftentimes. And Jerry worked so hard to get the culture back, and Bob took it over. And who would ever guess? Here we are now in 2023, and we're still at the top of the MAC Silver, is what it's called now. It used to be years ago the St. Clair Area League, but I had full confidence that Jerry was going to pick the right guy, and he did.
I got something to add too. You look back at the years, and Ron, you were there in the early to mid '90s when we'd play Marysville. We'd go up to Marysville, and we'd go up there. Maybe we'd be behind by 3 points or 7, and we'd be driving, and maybe a fumbled or something. You knew you had to play a perfect game, and we weren't able to get over the hump for quite a while against Walt Braun. But I think that when you look at it, the Marine City coaches probably learned so much from Walt Braun, and then got up over the hump, and because we might lose by a play or two, but it was so darn aggravating, I guess, to lose those games. And now you look 20 to 30 years later, and I think we're like 20-1 or 20-2 in the last 22 games against Marysville. So the tide has changed, and it's almost like Marine City has a 7-point lead going into the game before the kickoff. It's something in their head. And the tables have turned against a lot of competitors that way, that, back in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, you couldn't get over the hump, but now it's just steamrolling. Now, it's not easy, obviously. A lot of work, a lot of hard work Monday through Thursday, and then Saturday night, Sunday night for Ron and the coaches to prepare for the next week. So, but Andy and Ron, what do you say about that?
Go ahead, Coach.
No, there is no doubt about that. Marysville was the goal. Yeah, there's no doubt that Marysville was the gold standard, and I talk about it in the book. We don't become the Marine City we are today unless we have to figure out a way to beat Marysville, unless we study and analyze and learn everything from them that we can, and take it on to the next level. So what they had a system that remained intact all the way up. All their junior teams ran the same stuff. They had a coaching staff that stayed intact, and they scouted as well as anybody. They had an extensive scouting system with extra coaches and dads and things of that sort. So they set the tone, and then we just had to raise our bar one year after another. And I say in the book how Bob would put the score of the prior game in his locker, so that when he opened his locker every day, that would slap him in the face and motivate him to keep working to eventually get over that hump.
Right.
Yeah, I like I said, I was a kind of a foundational member as a player in that program, in the program, because Coach Bob took the reins when I became an 8th grader, which was, the introductory level of Marine City football at that time. And so, yes, I mean, all these things that coaches were alluding to in the 2-platoon system, going half line to get your best players on your best players, extending the coaching staff by bringing on people that scout and those kinds of things. And some of these individuals he didn't really know because he was new to the community. Right. And, he hired, we had Coach Rombach, who's been around, but he was a staple in the JV program. Coach Garens and Coach Westerhoff, they were staple in the freshman program, and then a couple of rookies from the city of Warren that didn't have any roots in Marine City either. So I mean, he was relying on, and Coach Working Team did have all those roots and was able to get him those people. He had guys like Chuck Wojak come in shortly thereafter. In and around the same time, he had a great basketball coach that was also a good football coach, and the late great Darrell Walker that came.
Oh, yeah,
I know, Dave, you had him as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So this was an era, and I know, Craig, you can attest to this too. during your time as a student, in and around Marine City, teachers were coaches.
Yep.
You didn't see, it's a little different now. It's a little more community oriented in that regard, but almost all of your staffs and all of your coaches of your school sports teams were teachers. Right. Many and most of those teachers lived in the community. And it was just a kind of a different time in that regard. And that network would kind of grow. We had a great one in Chet Wojak, who was actually a teacher and a coach in Anchor Bay for the majority of his time. That came into the Marine City program, and around the time his kids were starting to play sports. And he coached also in the softball program with Marv Osterlund for a long time. They won a state championship in 1990. So, the sports culture in Marine City was always extremely strong, but the guidance that developed and continued to develop, starting with Coach Workentine in that era, it's been Coach Du Bois in basketball in that era, is something else. And lest we forget baseball too. And Coach Glodich was part of those programs with, Tim Carlson kind of got that going, and he got to have some great baseball teams with some great players like Tim McConnell and Fred Windsor and the like. But, and that would be carried over by Chuck Windsor and Coach Glodich. So, again, area people. And Coach Windsor was a teacher at St. Clair. So, it just was kind of unique that everybody in that area, right in that town, basically, kind of had their thumb on it.
I'd like to point back to a game I remember. I couldn't tell you the year. Ron, you might know it better than I do, but we got beat by Marysville in Marysville earlier in the year. In a low-scoring game, got beat by a touchdown or something. We got held up at about a first and goal and stopped from going in to score. Coach Bob was probably fit to be tied for 4 weeks going on. And we came back to the playoffs and blew them away pretty handily. So there was a lot of coaching to be done, probably Ron, for the final 4 weeks of the season, then to get back to play Marysville. I want to say that was probably around 2000, I think. Can't remember what you had for lunch yesterday, but you can remember those things.
Yeah, I think that it just, when you play them tough, yeah, when your kids end up playing them tough in that game one, and you see them again in the playoffs, it's always tough to beat a good team twice. But at least by playing them tough the first time around, our kids knew, all right, we're there. We just need to do some things different. We need to work a little bit harder. And there's one thing you can always say about Marine City kids: they're not afraid to work. And I do want to go back to Craig Point, and I love that he brought it up about the scout team players, and to me. There's a lot of ways to describe a great team, the athletes and the chemistry and things of that sort. But one of the things people never, ever really talk about is, how dedicated are your scout team players? Do they know their role? Do they take pride in their role? And, in that 2013 team, we had guys, James Lowry, we had Anthony Murphy, we had, just a ton of guys that took pride, and we actually took it to another level where we would watch film as a scout team, just the scout players. Nobody else was in the room because we wanted them to perform at a certain level. And I think they loved that. And I would do some bizarre things, and we'd give them cookies for interceptions. But to have kids that are so dedicated like that, to me, that was a great separating feature of that year from maybe some of the other years that we had, just how dedicated our scout team was.
I'd like to just jump in there too. Being around the program, but not a coach, but being a counselor for 39 years, and kids would come in and we'd talk, and there was a great love for the football program that developed during this time, and kids just wanted their group to be successful, and they were consequently willing to put in a lot of extra effort. Our weight room expanded from the time I got there in 71, which I think was one set of 110-pound barbells that they kept in a closet, to what looked like a big, fantastic gym. And the kids used it because they all wanted to succeed and be a part of a winning program. And it was the kids and the coaches and then the parents buying in my mind, that built this thing up to where it became just really very special. And I think, Ron, you did a beautiful job in the book of kind of taking us through that trip as to how this was built and how it is being maintained. And, you know, it's special. High school sports are special. I think there are things that you learn in your sports, no matter if you're the star or if you're on the scout team, that you carry the rest of your days. And a lot of kids from Marine City certainly are carrying those great memories with them.
Another interview that comes to mind is when I had Andy alluded to the interviews that I did after probably 7 and 13 was the one I did with Jim LeBoon. And Jim, I can still see him sitting in front of me talking about it because Jim would say, he'd shake his head and he'd go, you know, everybody just does this much. Everybody just does this much. And it's if everybody can take that much off a coach's plate or a player's plate and just do that much, it just carries on. And I remember that. I'm sure Ron remembers some of that stuff too with Jim.
Jim LeBoon. That's a name that should be talked about. And, you know, another guy that wouldn't care that if it ever was.
Right.
In fact, he wouldn't. But I mean, now, that everyone does that much. He did that for Marine City football. He also did that for Macomb County. I mean, that he if he just would move across County Line Road into Lenox Township, I think he could beat Mark Hackle and become Macomb County. he was beloved there as a fire inspector, and he made the rounds. I mean, policemen knew him, paramedics knew him, the courts knew him. You know, all the local fire communities. I mean, I worked in Clintondale for those 13 years, and there were people, in the Clinton Township Fire Department.
Never met a stranger.
they would recognize me as somebody that knew Jim LeBoon, and that guy was very special, and how he could make people feel special. And his son is his son Jesse is color commentator with you now. He's a major part of the program. His grandson Easton LeBoon is part of the football program now as a player. And that's a famous name, in town. He's one of the first sons of the longtime mayor Irvin Biff LeBoon, and Jim LeBoon, was just one of those guys that he did more than probably this behind the scenes, but I mean that really catapulted this thing. He's one.
That's another thing. I mean, his name's on the plaque of the. In the dressing room, and it's there for a reason. So go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, really, the locker room's named after him. I mean, in Mr. LeBoon, Jim LeBoon, he didn't want that. He didn't need to do that. But for him to feel validated and part of it because he was alive and well. And I remember when I was a player, we were practicing and he had to go test the fire hydrants near Oxford High School just to make sure that they were working because he was a fire inspector. I'm a Macomb County fire inspector, not an Oakland County one. But nonetheless, just to get a little bit of a peek to see what was going on. And and I then used that. I used, that kind of thinking to get into the Olivet College press box so that I could go film the Zeeland West Country Day semifinal in 2007. When the Mariners were taking on Kingsford up, I believe, in Cadillac or Gaylord.
Gaylord, yeah.
And these are the things that people learn. I mean, they say it takes a village. Well, that Marine City mentality, it's by any means necessary, oftentimes.
Just one little anecdote about the Booner there. Yeah. It was wonderful. They had his memorial service when he passed from cancer at the field at East China Stadium. And to tell you what kind of a football guy he was, as I was walking in the stadium, I see this guy named Ron Cracchiola, who you see on all the Lions games, and he's wearing a pair of Bermuda short coveralls, and he's got his face painted, and he's a buddy of Booners, and I think that tells you to what extent Jim LeBoon was networked into the football culture of Southeast Michigan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the crack man was at his funeral at East China Stadium in full uniform.
And he was in his full fan outfit. Yep, the Super
That was
Bowl.
something else. Guys, and you guys can both chime in on this. And then Coach Glodich,
The other thing I want to bring up real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. Just, we talk about the great things he did, but for me personally, besides doing all the little things during the week, he just had a magical calming effect on me because he'd always want to shake your hand. He'd always want to come up and tell you a story. And he had a wonderful sense of humor. And it didn't matter if it was a playoff game or if it was a practice, he wanted to come in and just shake your hand and say hello and tell you a quick little story. It was a wonderful calming effect on me, before a game. And I love the depth of him for doing that. And I thank him, from heaven above for doing that for us.
Yeah. One more. And then I got some, we'll get to something that just is intriguing because people should know this too. But one more, we're bringing back the Thumb Area Coaches Clinic this December 2nd. And it's a great thing. It was, it's a bit of a fundraiser, but we bring local high school coaches, sometimes even college coaches, and conduct a coaches clinic at Golden Hawk Golf Course. And it's great. It's just like, it's kind of at the beginning and the advent of clinic season. It's great. It's a great start. I used to attend it all the time as a member of the Clintondale staff. And I was there. And Al Fracassa, the then head coach of Birmingham Brother Rice, the winningest all-time coach in Michigan high school football history, multiple time NFL high school football coach of the year, was speaking. And then there was a question and answer little section. People were talking about, how he's evolved as a football coach and how things have changed in his offense and his defense and how they structure practice. And then there was another question. It's Jim LeBoon. Coach, how's recruiting going? That is about to fall to the floor. Everybody just fell to the floor. And then you had Al, Fracassa, hey, let's wait one second. And he goes, hey, I don't ever invite any players. He starts going through some defensive thing, which was great. It was something else. But you know what? All that glitters is not always gold. And Dad, I know you were there for at least the end part of this. And Craig, you were young, but your brothers, I think, were part of this. And both of you can take a chance to talk about this because we have to. It's also you got to know the origins of this thing. What is Lippa's curse?
Well, Dave, you want to go first, or
you go ahead, Craig?
Well, what I've been told is I talked to Harpo himself and his cousin as well. So I sort of tried to get it both ways because you never know what you get out of Harpo himself. So I think we narrowed it down to about 68 or 69. Harpo Lippa, who his dad run the golf station in town, where Paul had his shop there on Broadway for years and years. So before that, Steve Lippa ran the shop. That's where the name comes from. So Harpo got caught smoking in school and got thrown off the football team as a junior or something. Harpo went to leave. He says, "You're never going to win another game the rest of your life." And then I don't know. They lost like about 35 in a row. So I guess it sort of worked.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's some interesting stories. He's truly a legend of legend, for somebody of our generation and obviously younger. But, even speaking to like some other people, like the Galvins who are more of that age, they took things, they grew up with him.
Yeah.
Just things that happened, that or may not have happened, allegedly. Like driver's ed courses where Harpo maybe had missteps there too. And
have you ever met Harpo? Yeah. Have you ever met him?
I have not.
Well, let me give you one quick example. Another thing, Harpo used to sit in a barber chair in the gas station, and used to pull up and get gas, and he'd just go like this to you, and you're like, you didn't know what he was doing. You pump it yourself, and so he would write it down. He'd get binoculars and look at the gas pump, and he'd know what it was. And he says, do you realize? His comment was, do you realize I was the inventor of self-service gas? So that's Harpo.
Oh man, I like this guy. I don't even know him, but I like him.
We probably should have Harpo to the stadium one of these days, right?
Yeah. Well, we can have more episodes.
I'll pull it. Yeah, maybe I'll get Harpo on it.
Harpo day.
Yeah, the Harpo lip.
I think we came out of the Harpo course quicker than the Lions came out of the number 22 Bobby Lane curse, which is kind of good. And Jerry deserves a lot of credit, because when he came in, things were
All right.
rock bottom. And,
Well, you look at that era too, Dave, because you were there and you lived it, but you forget about it till you bring it up. But Jerry did a great job, and so did Larry Rombach in the day, because Larry was a young coach there. So
former color commentator Jerry Bissett helped him out for a while,
Yep.
coaching.
Yeah.
And it was again getting the spirit back, as those guys coached played in the early to middle 60s.
Yeah.
When Marine City was pretty good. And they had a pretty good record, and football was respected. But for a while there, boy, we were in the cellar. And
Right.
but the fight to get out of that was impressive. And where it has taken us, that's documented so well in this book that I hope you all buy. And is amazing.
Yeah,
It's a great story. It's a story of an underdog. And boy, when we got into the playoffs over and over and over again, we kept getting these private schools that recruit from all over. And somehow, again, we kept on fighting, and we got there finally in 2007. But like we've already said several times, Coach Bob certainly set the tone.
He absolutely.
If you want to pinpoint a couple games against the Goliaths of the world, I would say you've got Country Day and Flint Powers, and who else, Ron? Those are the two big private schools that I think about. That if you look on paper and you watched them roll into the stadium and run in, and you went,
Our first win over Oxford was huge. Yeah.
Look at these athletes. Oh boy. We got guys that are 5'11". Yeah, we got guys 5'11", 160, and then they got guys 6'4", 220. Like, oh boy.
I think they got him out of the Oakland County Youth Home, and the coach had sort of fostered him. Just happened that he went to Michigan State, and I think he ended up playing pro ball. But
Chicago Bears for several years as a starter, Carl Reeves.
Yeah, there you go. And of course, the year before, we ended up running into Tyrone Wheatley, and then Coach Bob said, "Don't feel bad. This guy's playing on Sunday." But when you talk about playing on Sunday, and you look at that 2007 Country Day team, I think 3 guys from that team played on Sunday.
Jonas
Kenny
Gray.
Dimmons, Jonas Gray,
Fowler for like 10 or 11 years.
and Benny Fowler. Benny Fowler, I think, caught Peyton Manning's touchdown pass. But we played against them in 2007, and we beat them.
Yeah, Kenny Dimmons, who was the Michigan captain linebacker, played for the Cardinals. Jonas Gray, we all know, Notre Dame, and then, had some huge playoff games in the NFL for the New England Patriots. 4 touchdowns in one game for the New England Patriots. But really, Fowler had the longest career. He was a fine receiver at Michigan State, but I think he ended up playing like 10 or 11 years for the Denver Broncos.
But that's where that
team. And then, you had Alma High School. I know Scotty Cole, who's an assistant coach at Alma College, who was a player on that football team. That was regarded as the greatest football team in Alma High School history. That the Mariners went up there and broke their heart. In a real, I wasn't part of that staff at that time, but I know it was a high-scoring game. And really, Kingsford had been there and done it. They had been to the state finals. They beat Imlay City to win the state championship.
10, 11 years before that. I know Marysville played them in the state finals in 1992. And there were several other times where the Flibbers had advanced into the state finals. And I think that's who the Mariners had to beat in 2007 to get to the state finals.
I think the Elma game that night was just magical, and it was two teams that were like equally matched, right? I mean,
you had a quarterback. This is Class B high school playoffs. Yeah. The quarterbacks are going to Indiana and Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a great matchup too, and I know that's a different season. Getting back to the book, Craig, is there a specific part in this book that just you either can see it like it was yesterday, or just is something that just sticks to you like glue?
I just think talking about the scout teams is because I sort of, with my son lived that part of it, and knowing that every, whatever, if it was 48 kids or 52 kids, every one of them felt as important as the next, and knew that their number might be called at some point, and they got to be ready for it.
Good point, Craig.
100%, Craig. I mean, and that's a selling point that was done long ago, in this program, and it means a little more, I think, in this program, and it resonates a little bit more. And I think it's the people like your, great families like yourself, that can really adopt it and understand that, and still take that for what it's worth. It's like your role in winning this championship was longer and throughout the week. That
I would like to think because of that Marine City is spoiled, but also more understanding of the team concept than most other schools and cities. I had a discussion with the principal a couple weeks ago and said, this football team, where the way it starts out in the fall, has to set a good foundation for your school year. And I guess, Dave Shields, I'll ask you that because you're a counselor. I think a good football team and a program, the respect that it builds, carries right through that school all year.
Yeah, I just add in here, the community has become so deeply involved, and the Channel 6 broadcast, Craig, with you has been a big part of that. When I retired in 2010, I joined this senior center golf group, and there's some guys that are quite a bit older than me that are big fans of Mariner football, and a lot of them never made it to a game, but they watched it on Channel 6. And they didn't grow up around here. They grew up in southeastern Michigan someplace, but became great fans of this football program. The culture of this program has really been bought by the community, and that's a tribute to, again, the coaches and the players and how hard they work. But Channel 6 has been a nice plus. I can remember every spring when we started golfing, this one guy who, again, worked for GM and lived down at Grosse Pointe or something, he moved up here to retire, would say, how are the boys going to do this year? Because he was interested in how the team was going to be.
That's special to get a community like that together and rally around a singular purpose, right? And it's special. It was special living there, and it really means more to me hearing about it now and hearing you all talk about it. And Coach Glodich, I'd like to ask you, and thank you, first of all, for allowing us to, help with this, because it's enhanced my appreciation of the book and what you all were able to do. But I'd like you to talk about, would Marine City, the program, be where it is if you didn't have Nemesis up north? What would it have happened in your mind?
Maybe it might have taken a little bit longer, to the gold state of Michigan. Their dominance at league play, their dominance in the playoffs, their dominance everywhere was spoke out so highly across the whole state of Michigan. So, we may have got there because we were all competitors, and we, losing playoff games might have got us there. But, Marysville is definitely the catalyst. They got us working harder and harder and harder every year to get where we wanted to be. and I gave him credit in the book because you have to give credit where credit is due. So I make sure I speak of them positively, not only of Walt Brown, but of their defensive coordinator, Jim Vina. I thought he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant defensive coordinator. And we learned so much about how to run our defense. We modeled our defense off of Jim Vina's defense from Marysville. And then we tweaked it from there. But our initial 5-2 was all based off of Jim Vina's defense at Marysville.
Coach Shield, any final thoughts?
Well, this is a real special one. Obviously, I've got, my dad on here, but, Craig, who's just an immense part of this whole thing. And to have him on here, I mean, it's a big deal. This is, just forget the Channel 6 stuff. It's Craig Zimmerman, who's just one of the greatest guys to talk to. You can sit and, just a great conversationalist. Smart man, a guy that's been around, he's a blue blood of Marine City. The Zimmerman name is a big name in that community. And just to be able to share some time with those two, and of course with Coach, I don't get to see him as much as I used to or talk to him as much as I used to. And I miss that. But it's so great to be able to share this. And I'm trying to brainstorm more and more episodes so we can keep doing these things. I mean, we already got Harpo Lippa in the can. But we're going to add some more. We are going to have some more, and I'm just going to say it right now. It's I hope these guys are going to watch this. It's kind of like calling the band back together with the Blues Brothers. But we're going to get that 2013 football staff. That's going to be an episode soon. We're entering into a busy period of time, but we've got some things that are coming up with the book in regards to some other release dates. And things that are kind of like landmark milestone dates that we're going to continue to celebrate and do some things with Run to the River. But, this book to me, what I love about it is that, you have this big, beautiful palace, which is the 2013 football season. But the way it's, Coach, wrote it and the way it's been edited and published, the bricks to the foundation of this palace are being laid in front of you too. So as you're reading about this wonderful story in our football team that year, you're also getting the bigger picture and a glance and some of the special people and moments and things that took in building it. So, I mean, if I know a lot of our viewers are individuals that are extremely close to Marine City and they have read the book. But if you have not, this is the time. This is something that this is your book. It's about you, Marine City, and I implore you and just please consider reading this book because it really will change your heart.
If I could just add a couple more thoughts.
Absolutely.
One part of the book that was in there was Ron talking about his mom and dad. Because from the first day I saw him coach, which was the first day or first year he was at the school, I forget which sport he even was, but his mom and dad were there, and they were wonderful role models of parenthood. And I had the joy of having Grandpa John, his dad, sit with me probably the last 3 or 4 years before he couldn't make it up the stairs anymore. And what a wonderful human being he was. And you think this is how, again, the influence of parents on kids who then become influence on their kids and influence on players. And all that's in the book, too. And another reason just to buy the book and read it and enjoy it. And thank you, Ron, for doing it.
Oh, that he loved you, Dave. He absolutely loved you. And I talk about in the book how he wanted to go early to the game with me at 4:30, and he wanted to go early just to see Dave Shield, and he wanted to go up into the press box and hang out with Dave Shield. He loved him that much. And I also want to share, and Craig's going to get a chuckle out of this, probably Craig's greatest contribution during the 2013 season and then beyond is when we'd have our after parties back at the house and everybody would kind of start having a sip or two. Craig would engage my father-in-law and keep him busy the rest of the night so that he would be off of my shoulder and off of my annoyance. And I couldn't thank him enough for that. That was just a wonderful way for me to relax and not worry about dealing with my father-in-law during the night there. So that was wonderful.
Well, I knew if I asked him a question or two, I'd get him rolling for a while. So
Everyone working together, right?
Yeah.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the show today. Very much. Craig, thank you. Great meeting you. Mr. Shield, always great talking to you. Miss you. Want to see you soon. And Coach Ron, can't thank you enough. Again, love the book and can't wait to read it again. And I'm looking forward to what's in store down the road. Thank you, Coach Shield. As always, you're the rock of this podcast, and thanks for helping bring this story to life. Because A Run to the River ties into something that you did. I'd like to ask you before we close this one out about that title, because we haven't really talked about it in detail. How cold is the St. Clair River in November?
Not as bad as one might think. It's really not. I mean, and once you're in there, actually, those are incredibly cold days. I mean, this year, I think it's going to probably be like 65 degrees on those days. I mean, those are days you would technically consider going to the beach anyway. So, I mean, but back in those, I mean, it was. It's like, okay, this guy's going to write a book about this someday. It's going to be 20 degrees that day. And so the air temperature was cold, and you'd be like, this guy's crazy. But it's actually pretty calm and peaceful once I got in there. I was like, I don't know if I really want to get out.
That's great. It's a great title. It's a great story. Again, it's available now on Amazon. Pick it up, everybody. So thank you, Coach Glodich. Thank you, Mr. Shield. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Coach Shield. Thanks everybody for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button on this one, and we're going to have more coming for you every week. Stick and stay with us, and take care, everybody. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.